It is the moment many consumers have been waiting for. A notorious pharmaceutical company owner, reviled for his drug price gouging, is finally facing federal charges, indicted in a multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. The FBI arrested 32-year-old Martin Shkreli in New York City on securities fraud charges. He is the founder and CEO of Turning Pharmaceuticals. Shkreli ignited a firestorm when he hiked the price of a life-saving drug from $13.50 up to $750.
U.S. Attorney Robert Capers announced Shkreli's indictment earlier today. Listen.
The defendant, Shkreli, is charged in all 7 counts of our indictment for orchestrating 3 interrelated schemes, 2 involving 2 different hedge funds that he ran, that he founded and he managed, and the 3rd involving Retrophin Incorporated, a publicly traded company that Shkreli founded and at one point controlled as its chief executive officer. The defendant, Evan Grable, a New York City-based lawyer and outside counsel to Retrophin, is charged with 1 count of wire fraud conspiracy for his role in the Retrophin scheme. Now, as alleged in the indictment, Shkreli essentially ran his companies like a Ponzi scheme, where he used each subsequent company to pay off defrauded investors from the prior company.
Business correspondent DeMarco Morgan here with us now. This is a very tangled web. I was listening to this news conference as it was happening, and it was hard to really keep everything in order. So just kind of give us the basics of what happened here today.
Well, one, it's a lot to take in, but a lot of people are not shocked. It's almost like you could see something was coming in this situation from this guy, Martin Shkreli. And we also want to point out that he has not been tried and found guilty. So these are also allegations. Want to keep that in mind. But earlier today, we talked about it. We were actually outside of the federal building. He was arrested at his home early this morning, arrested without incident. We were standing outside of the federal building when he was actually escorted out. You can see him there in handcuffs with a gray hoodie on. And many people, ordinary folks who depend on a drug that he was providing through his company, Daraprim, were pretty much happy to see this day. We spoke with some of the people who were downtown. Let's just paint this picture real quick and tell you about this guy. Daraprim was actually talking to one of our colleagues on CBS this morning during an interview and talking about this drug and how he had hiked the prices from $13.50, you guys talked about it for this drug, to $750. That's a 5,000% increase, which is outrageous. You said it. And this drug, the reason why it was so important and shocking, it treats toxoplasmosis, also HIV and cancer, and also malaria. So this is something that people depend on. They need it. And let's face it, $13.50, that's a lot for some people. So imagine $750. A lot of people at home, I remember watching it, shocked. I said to myself, can he do this?
Yeah.
Is this possible? Right. But this is also related to what we're talking about today. So let's talk about that. A 7-count indictment. Again, we just talked about it and heard from U.S. Attorney Robert Capers on this. A 7-count indictment handed down to Shkreli, and also an attorney who is also believed to be involved in this case. His name is Evan Grable. He's a New York attorney, and he's in this indictment because they're saying that he provided counsel through this entire incident. So let's talk about what this all means and what we know. Shkreli, this is what he's charged with securities fraud conspiracy, and wire fraud conspiracy for orchestrating 3 interrelated schemes. You talked about this and how it's sort of large in detail. Schemes to defraud investors in MSMB Capital and MSMB Healthcare, and a scheme to misappropriate Retrophin's assets. That's the company that he is the CEO. Now, Grable, we talked about this, is charged with wire fraud conspiracy for his role in the Retrophin scheme. So this is a big case here. Everybody's talking about it, but now we got to see what happens next.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, we heard Ponzi scheme.
Yes.
So as soon as you hear Ponzi scheme, many
that
people hear that.
Flag.
Yes,
yeah.
but you immediately think of
Bernie Madoff.
Bernie Madoff, excuse
yeah.
me. His name just escaped me.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. So basically, where he's lying to his investors, and then he's got to figure out how to pay those investors.
And that's why he's maybe perhaps raising it. They're not saying that this is the price raising is related to this, but it's also interesting just for people to get a little sense of who this guy is. We have some sound of him from a recent healthcare summit. Let's play a little bit of that.
If you could rewind the clock a few months, I wonder if you would do anything differently.
Raise the price higher is probably what I would have done.
Why?
I think healthcare prices are inelastic. I could have raised it higher and made more profits for our shareholders.
Wow. I mean,
there's no regret.
No.
Absolutely not.
And what's interesting is that this guy, I don't know if people know this, he went out and he bid on a Wu-Tang Clan album. This is a one-time deal. The band recorded this one album. It cost something like $2 million, I think, right, guys in the control room? $2 million. He bought this record. And people are like, so this is what he's spending his money on, while people need this drug for their health. Right, exactly. It really is shocking, DeMarco. And so when he came out of the courtroom, did he say anything to anybody? Did he just go straight into the car?
Absolutely said nothing. He just had this like sort of look on his face as if, not necessarily that I don't care, because I can only imagine what it's like to be arrested. Hope I never find that out. But he had this look on his face like he was just walking to his car. He had nothing to say.
Everybody
was trying to speak.
Somewhat emotionless.
Trying to speak to him, and he wouldn't say anything, asking questions, but he was surrounded, of course, by FBI agents and attorneys there. You see the hoodie there that sort of plays into his whole youthful side of things as well. We got to keep in mind, this is a young guy who was running major corporations and, you know, making tons of money, but also trying to defraud investors, and that's what authorities are looking at right now.
DeMarco, was there any indication when this investigation started? I mean, did it start way beyond when he tried to hike the price of that drug, or was that somewhat maybe the catalyst to say, hey, let's see what this guy's all about here?
Well, anytime you're dealing with federal authorities, I'm sure it takes months and months before they sort of crack down. They're not going to come out without dotting their I's and crossing their T's. So it took some time. I don't think we got the exact time of the investigation. That's probably why they call it an investigation, because they don't want it to get leaked out and, you know, let people know that we're looking at this person or looking at these two people. But it did take some time. And from someone who's just ordinary, stepping out of the journalist hat, but just watching the news, after hearing the interview that he did with our colleague Don Daler, you had to say, okay, wait a minute. Authorities are going to be on this guy.
Right.
They're going to be looking at this because, red flag. Well, $13.50 to $750, and then you say comments like you just said, like, you know, nonchalant.
You should have raised it. So let's bring in attorney Matthew Kaiser. He's in Washington. Matthew, you've been following this case. Even though Shkreli is known by the general public for price gouging a life-saving pill, that's actually not the focus of his arrest. So what do we know about these securities fraud charges?
That's exactly right. I mean, there are really three kinds of schemes, three things that they're saying Shkreli did. The first two are related. I mean, they're the same kind of thing. He had two hedge funds. And what he was doing is what you do in any securities fraud case. He was telling investors that they were doing really, really well, when in fact it looks like some of that, if you believe the indictment, was not true. The third one is the one that's maybe a little bit more interesting, a little bit more Ponzi-like. He had started this company's publicly traded, and he was taking money, according to the indictment, taking money from the publicly traded company where there are investors presumably coming in from the public, and he's using that to pay off both his personal debts and debts that were run up from his first two hedge funds. And that's where it starts to look like he's taking money from new investors and he's giving it to his old investors and able to pay them off for money he promised them that he just couldn't deliver on.
Yeah, he was actually fired from another biopharmaceutical company called Retrofin last year because of that reason.
Yes, exactly. Retrofin's the company, and that's the allegation, that he's taking Retrofin investor money and he's using it to pay off his past misdeeds.
So go ahead, DeMarco.
Yeah, just a quick question for you, DeMarco. Here, we haven't had the chance to meet, but we're meeting now. Question for you. Good. Pleasure to meet you. When and if this guy is found guilty, how much time are we looking at? How much time could he face in federal prison?
Sure. Well, that's a great question, and it's hard to know at this point. It really, federal sentencing is driven by how much loss he intended to cause and how many millions of dollars he took. And it's kind of in a strange place, because you're seeing judges impose sentences for some people that are really, really quite significant. I mean, more than 10 years, more than 15 years. On the other hand, there are some judges who think that those kinds of sentences for white-collar cases are just out of line. One thing that will be interesting if this gets to sentencing is one thing a federal judge looks at is whether you're a jerk. And the problem is our friend in this case seems to have alienated just about everyone in the country. I mean, I don't know if his parents return his phone calls anymore. He's, if it's not the price gouging and the securities fraud, it's the Wu-Tang Clan. He has really done a lot to make a federal judge angry at him if he gets to that point.
Are you hinting at karma, Matthew? Is this karma?
I think karma's in play. Karma's in play.
But before we even get to the possible sentencing, the possible verdict in this case, could there be even more charges? I mean, is this investigation? It's obviously not over.
Well, I mean, there could be, but at this point, I doubt there are. One thing that I think is interesting about this guy is he's not shy about talking publicly. You know, he tweets a lot. He's got these live streams of him just sort of playing video games or musing about life. If I'm a prosecutor, if I'm a lawyer for the government, I would let that run out as far as I can, because he's just giving them a lot of stuff. I mean, he's tweeting about the lawsuit he's got from shareholders from his company, and that's kind of at the heart of the criminal case. The guy he's really not doing himself any favors by giving the government more and more ammunition to bury him. So based on that, I would suspect that we've really seen what we have to see, that there aren't going to be new charges in this case. I could be wrong, but that's how I'd read the tea leaves right now.
One more question. You talked about the money. I want to go back to the possible time that he could face. We're talking about $11 billion in this case. That's completely different from the Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme there and how he was sent to jail for the rest of his life. People want to see this guy go away forever. But is that possible when we're talking about just $11 million?
It's possible, but probably not going to happen. I mean, this is going to go in one of two tracks. He's either going to go to trial or he's going to take a plea. With this guy, with his public demeanor, everything we know about him, you got to think at this point it kind of looks like a trial is going to be the better bet, which, to be perfectly honest, would be in some ways spectacular. But if this guy goes to trial, I think he's going to get hit a lot harder than he would if he takes a plea, assuming he's found guilty. If he goes to trial and loses, I don't think he's Bernie Madoff rest of his life kind of prison time, but it could be significant.
All right, we're going to be following that. Matthew Kaiser in Washington, DeMarco Morgan, welcome to CBS. Good to have you.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Have a great day.
Both.
Thank you both.
Thank you.